You're damn right I'm done. I'm going to ask for a mistrial. I'm going to take a transcript of the trial to the Judicial Conduct.
Top 6 actors Paul Newman couldn't stand. Back in the day, Paul Newman stood tall as the nation's beloved screen icon. A dreamy face and piercing blue eyes helped cement his status as Hollywood royalty. Beneath that magnetic charm and generous nature, though, hid a man with deeply rooted beliefs about discipline and professionalism. To Newman, sloppiness and ego were deal breakers. Driven by an intense passion for excellence, Newman set a high bar for himself and everyone around him. He didn't mince words when it came to performers he saw as coasting on good looks or shallow charm. Newman's fierce dedication and unwavering principles often led to serious friction with his Hollywood peers. Few knew how his moral backbone caused real strain between him and other famous faces of the time. What the public often missed was just how much his no-nonsense attitude stirred up behind the camera. These weren't casual disagreements, they were lasting personal rifts. We're talking full-blown clashes that impacted movie sets, friendships, and even halted projects midstream. Insiders say these moments left real marks in the golden age of the silver screen. Now you're about to get an insider look at feuds that reveal the less polished version of Paul Newman. This isn't tabloid gossip, it's the real story from those who were there. From artistic clashes to private outbursts at glitzy events, Newman's confrontations weren't always pretty. They unveiled a man who didn't suffer fools and never backed down. Let's take a deep dive into Paul Newman's most unforgettable Hollywood face-offs. Here are 6 stars he locked horns with, and the tales that prove even he had his breaking point. Rock Hudson. Hudson to Paul Newman was the poster child for everything wrong with Hollywood's assembly line star-making. With his polished charm and box office appeal, Hudson was adored by audiences across the country. But for Newman, none of that mattered. He saw a facade instead of an authentic performer. Newman believed Hudson's fame had been sculpted by publicists and marketing, not by genuine skill. From his birth name to his backstory and high-profile relationships, everything seemed designed, not real. That level of image control, in Newman's view, betrayed what acting was supposed to stand for. To him, it was a betrayal of the art, a theatrical illusion pushed by executive agendas. Their clashing views came to a boiling point during a glamorous industry party in the late 60s. Fueled by alcohol and principle, Newman chose that moment to air his frustrations in public. He didn't hold back. He slammed actors who relied more on appearances than raw ability. It wasn't just a casual jab. He was calling out the very foundation of some careers. Hudson tried to keep the peace by exiting the conversation, but Newman pursued him relentlessly. Even as Hudson attempted to retreat, Paul's criticism grew sharper and louder. Guests stood frozen as the blue-eyed star publicly lashed out against what Hudson represented. The room buzzed with discomfort as Newman delivered a harsh critique of stardom itself. Word spread fast. The altercation became a hot topic before the night even ended. Hollywood's gossip machine spun into overdrive as agents scrambled to do damage control. In the aftermath, tensions ran so deep that they avoided even attending the same events. The conflict had moved beyond that night. It lingered like a shadow over future gatherings. Newman's disdain for Hudson wasn't just personal, it was philosophical. He didn't just dislike the man, he loathed what he stood for in the industry. For Paul, Hudson symbolized a world where talent was secondary to packaging and marketing. To him, this kind of success undermined everything serious actors were working toward. One veteran agent from the era remembered exactly how Newman framed the whole situation. He recalled, Paul believed rock stood for every single thing he was pushing back against. It wasn't about just one actor, it was about an entire system Newman wanted to dismantle. Through rock, Paul launched a protest against what he saw as a false Hollywood machine, Warren Beatty. In a time when Paul Newman and Warren Beatty were both dominating the big screen, comparisons were inevitable. These two heartthrobs shared the spotlight, the fan base, and the fight for the same blockbuster roles. But beneath the surface, a deeper tension bubbled up, one rooted in personality and purpose. Newman saw Beatty as someone more obsessed with glitz and status than substance. To him, Beatty's priorities leaned more toward PR than performance. The rivalry escalated when their personal lives intersected, both men showing interest in the same leading lady on a movie set. And that off-screen tension pushed their professional rivalry into something much more personal. Tension quietly built up between them, leading to uncomfortable experiences on set and worsening their already fragile working dynamic. To Newman, Beatty seemed to be charming his way into favorable situations, mixing personal motives with professional gain. It didn't help that Newman watched Beatty climb the Hollywood ladder as a producer, which only deepened his irritation. Unlike Beatty, who took control behind the scenes, Newman kept his focus strictly on his craft as an actor. That shift in power, in Newman's eyes, tilted the playing field and gave Beatty better access to elite roles and directors. Their competition stretched across the years, making joint efforts nearly impossible to sustain. Multiple planned projects collapsed midway, largely because neither wanted to give up top billing. To avoid further fallout, their agents began steering them toward different productions entirely. A director who had been caught in the middle remembered just how tense the atmosphere could be. According to him, Paul saw Warren as the embodiment of everything fake in show business. Hollywood politics, inflated egos, and a lack of real dedication. Paul thought Warren had all of it. From the start, the two actors clashed like fire and ice, utterly incompatible. Marlon Brando. Paul Newman deeply admired Brando for revolutionizing screen performance. Brando's emotionally raw acting in A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront left a lasting impression on him. But over time, that admiration soured as Brando's erratic nature began affecting their professional dealings. While Paul prided himself on punctuality and preparation, Brando seemed to treat those values with indifference. Newman grew increasingly annoyed with how Brando casually dismissed basic responsibilities on set. Things came to a head when both men were in talks for a major role in the late 1960s. Brando appeared at key meetings late, lacked preparation, and insisted on rewrites for no clear reason. Newman sat there stunned, watching a master of the craft act as if none of it mattered. What hurt the most was seeing Brando throw away his gifts by disregarding the collaborative process. To Newman, great talent demanded great discipline, and Brando had failed to meet that standard. The film ultimately dissolved, largely due to Brando's unwillingness to cooperate. Newman carried the sting of that failed project with him for years. He came to view Brando as a warning sign of what happens when genius isn't backed by structure. One casting director, who saw their interactions firsthand, summed it up better than anyone else could. Paul wanted everyone to bring the same level of respect and focus that he did to every set. Brando, on the other hand, created his own rules, and Paul couldn't stand that kind of chaos. Cary Grant. To Paul, Cary symbolized all the things he disliked about the golden age of Hollywood. Grant's ease and elegance made acting look effortless, which rubbed Newman the wrong way. Grant's style, in Newman's view, came off as too polished and lacking in real feeling, something Paul thought was essential to powerful performances. Coming from a background rooted in method acting, Newman believed truth on screen came from tapping into genuine emotion, not surface-level tricks. To Paul, Grant's smooth, easygoing screen presence felt repetitive, as though he was recycling one version of himself in every role. He believed Grant had never stepped outside his comfort zone or truly stretched his capabilities as an actor. Their tension erupted publicly during a glamorous Hollywood gathering in the mid-1960s. At a panel discussing the evolving landscape of film performance, Newman made remarks that were widely seen as thinly veiled shots at Grant's methods. Grant, not one to take slights lightly, was deeply insulted by what he perceived as arrogance from a younger peer. In a sharp retort, Grant challenged whether Newman's intense, brooding style actually brought more value than the traditional charm that had long won over audiences. He accused Newman of being overly self-important, arguing that cinema was meant to captivate and entertain, not just showcase technique. The room turned tense as onlookers sensed the weight of this generational standoff. Colleagues and insiders suddenly found themselves navigating a divide, torn between two schools of thought on performance. That disagreement over artistic approach widened into a philosophical rift that followed both men through the rest of their careers. Newman stood firm in his belief that Grant embodied a kind of acting that was more about surface than substance. Meanwhile, Grant viewed Newman as emblematic of a new Hollywood that had become obsessed with seriousness and lost the joy of storytelling. One producer, familiar with both stars, offered a blunt but accurate take on their standoff. Cary thought Paul was too heavy-handed, and Paul believed Cary didn't take anything seriously. They became living symbols of two clashing legacies within the entertainment world. Steve McQueen. Though Steve McQueen and Paul Newman seemed destined to get along, their bond never truly formed. They shared a passion for acting, race cars, and daring stunts, and both refused to play along with Hollywood's political games. But instead of bonding over shared values, their similarities ignited a fierce sense of rivalry. Each man wanted the title of Hollywood's most genuine and magnetic leading man. The media constantly pitted them against each other, fueling a silent competition neither could ignore. Every new movie Part 1 accepted felt like a missed opportunity for the other. Things came to a head at a high-profile race event in the early 1970s, where their rivalry went from subtle to explosive. Newman and McQueen weren't just casual fans of racing. They were deeply committed participants in high-level competitions. At one of these adrenaline-filled races, McQueen executed some bold maneuvers that struck Newman as reckless and lacking basic courtesy. Once the checkered flag had dropped, Newman decided to directly address McQueen about the way he had driven. What began as a calm conversation about on-track safety swiftly exploded into a full-blown argument over status, conduct, and who truly earned the crown of Hollywood's go-to tough guy. Before long, crew members and fellow racers had to jump in to prevent the heated exchange from spiraling into an actual fight. Their bond took a major hit after that episode and never quite recovered over time. Even though they still chased after similar action-heavy roles, their rivalry was now laced with genuine dislike. People working within the industry quickly figured out that mentioning either actor in front of the other was a risky move. Their drive to outdo one another didn't just live in film sets or racetracks, it bled into their entire lifestyle. They were constantly trying to top each other in every category, from car collections to track records to their standing among fellow actors. A stuntman who worked closely with both men during that era said he still remembers how tense things often got between them. Paul and Steve, he said, were like two lions eyeing the same territory, and only one could lead the pack when it came to action movies. William Holden. Holden carved out a name for himself as one of the finest dramatic performers of his generation, thanks to unforgettable roles in films such as Sunset Boulevard and The Bridge on the River Kwai. In some ways, he and Newman shared similar reputations as intelligent actors who brought authenticity and weight to their characters. However, their methods for reaching those performances couldn't have been more at odds. Holden liked to dissect every line and action, thoroughly mapping out his character before the cameras even started rolling. Newman, on the other hand, leaned heavily into instinct and spontaneity to breathe life into his roles as filming unfolded. Their philosophical clash came to a boiling point while they were in early talks for a potential film collaboration during the 1970s. Holden openly wondered whether Newman's looser, more organic technique would clash with his more structured approach during their initial script readings. Newman, taking offense, interpreted Holden's remarks as patronizing and dismissive of his talent. To Newman, Holden's meticulous planning strangled natural emotion and turned powerful scenes into rigid performances. He strongly believed that the most moving moments in film couldn't be pre-planned. They had to come from surprise and instinct in the moment. Things got personal once Holden began discussing Newman's reliability and artistic seriousness with others in the industry. That move deepened the rift between them, turning what could have been a creative partnership into lasting distance. Holden's decision to question Newman's professionalism behind closed doors lit a fire Newman couldn't ignore. Instead of having an honest conversation face-to-face, Holden chose whispers, and that didn't sit well with Paul. Conflicting ideas about their craft stood in the way of any real collaboration between the two. No matter how talented both men were, their creative values drove a wedge between them from the start. Any chance of working together vanished quickly, leaving both stars to quietly avoid future overlap. They walked away from the fallout with a silent agreement to steer clear of each other's paths. While fans adored Newman for his piercing eyes and quiet charisma, few saw the fire inside. Beneath that composed exterior was a man deeply committed to his vision of artistic truth. His relentless pursuit of perfection earned him admiration and made him a threat to those with softer standards. Not everyone could meet Paul's expectations, and many clashed with him because of that. Curious about more intense behind-the-scenes rivalries from Hollywood's golden era? Hit the subscribe button and tell us which stars you'd like us to cover next.